So again, I'm jumping around a little bit in terms of the timeline, as this was delivered just after the framing was done. But this is the rockwool insulation being delivered from Lowe's. We've got 3 different types of rockwool insulation for the ceiling, for the walls, and the interior walls, which is the thinnest type. This is about $2,300 worth of insulation. Pretty bulky, took up a lot of space on the job site, but was very important to have it staged. So we are now almost done with the insulation. We've gone with rockwool R23 on the walls, 2x6 walls, and R30 on the ceiling, which is 2x8 rafters, a vaulted ceiling here. And we have these Duravents for a vented roof that go above the insulation there. Takes about an inch away from the cavity, but seems to work pretty well so far. So we went with rockwool because it is more fire resistant. It's also pretty good at sound insulation, and it has a slightly higher R value than the fiberglass stuff that we were comparing to. So it does cost a little bit more. Home Depot don't sell rockwool, so I had to get this from Lowe's. But it's pretty easy to work with. You just cut it with a bread knife, as you can see here. Just a regular IKEA bread knife. It's worked really well. It is a little bit of a pain to get around various obstructions like boxes, light fixtures, studs, HVAC components, but that's going to be the same with any type of insulation. And we've just got a few bits to tidy up here in the corners. I know it's not good practice to have bits pushed in like this, so at the end we'll make sure everything's sort of fluffed up and flush with the surface. But the framers are going to come back on Monday. They're actually going to level the studs and the rafters, so they're going to put long level across, and they will either shim or plane the studs to get it completely flat, because if you do put a straight level, a straight edge along that, it's not exactly flat. So they'll be doing that on Monday, and then if it passes inspection on Monday for insulation, we should be good to drywall. These interior walls are going to get insulated as well, but we can't really do that until there's some backing on the other side. We put some insulation in and around the tub. You've got plenty of offcuts here, so plenty of leftovers to do that. And I think it's a good idea just to retain heat in the tub when it's full, maybe help with the sound deadening as well. And you can see the bedroom here is pretty much done. And it actually feels very quiet in here. The sound insulation properties are definitely working. So just a few more details, these edges to insulate, and I've got to connect the HVAC lines here, make sure those are all secure before we can put the insulation in there and close it up. As you can see, the HVAC lines are coming in across the studs here. Wasn't ideal, but had to be done. Because it's a 2x6 wall, there was plenty of space to do that safely, and they are all going out there to the condenser unit, which is going to be on the outside here. A few more insulation details. We insulated the hot water pipes, and we'll actually put some insulation around the ducts here. So that's the bathroom fan, the kitchen fan, the dry vent. We'll put insulation around that. We've got a special kind of insulation, pipe insulation for that. And that's pretty much where we're at right now. We also put some spray foam into various cracks in the building. There you can see there was one that was a bit too small to fill with rockwool. We sealed along the mud sill here, and actually there's a foam gasket along the mud sill as well. So hopefully that will help with insulation and keeping out the bugs. But this is not going to be an airtight structure. If I could go back, maybe I would have designed it that way. But actually I think it's good for the structure to breathe as well and prevent any trapped moisture. So there are a few gaps and cracks here and there. The house wrap will probably help deal with some of that. You can probably see a bit of daylight coming in through that crack there, and the siding of course. But I'll probably go around before we seal everything up and just deal with any last cracks that we can see. But I don't think we're going to get an airtight home here, and that's kind of okay. Where we live in California, the temperature is pretty mild all year round, so frankly the old house has no insulation in the walls, and this has a ton of insulation throughout, so already it's going to be a massive upgrade on the old construction. So now I'm jumping forward to the point where we actually have done the insulation and are ready for the drywall. Okay, so here we are, we're ready for drywall tomorrow. The drywall has already dropped off, I think it's about 70 sheets of 4x8, 5/8 drywall here. And it's been a bit of a mad rush to get everything ready. Most of the exterior insulation was already in, and it passed inspection, but we didn't have any of the interior insulation in, and that's much more difficult to do given these are open walls. So the bathroom, the bedroom's done. We also had to install this pocket door, which was a little bit of a pain. The header's actually framed in a little bit shorter than it should have been, so that made our job a little bit more difficult, but hopefully it's all good. You can see some of the interior insulation here. It's a bit of a patchwork because there's a lot of pipes, so it's kind of difficult actually. Another thing that we've been rushing to do is put in some of the backing for the kitchen cabinets. There's a few pieces of backing I still want to put in for the TV, and possibly some backing on this wall for kitchen cabinets. See if we'll have time to do that tomorrow. Also pushed in most of the electrical wires just to make sure they don't get snagged during the drywall. Checking for any remaining screws in the wall. Some of these wires, these are for cabinet lights, and that's for the island or the peninsula for the kitchen, so that's just going to run into the cabinets. Those are cabinet lights. We had to wrestle with the dry vent a little bit. You can see it here. So this is a 2x4 wall, which is not ideal because a 4-inch vent doesn't fit through, but there is this dryer box for 2x4 walls, but you have to squash a 4-inch pipe to get it to fit. So there it is going up, and then it actually comes into the room, so there's going to have to be a little bit of a drywall box there to box it in. Could have run up through the stud, through that stud wall here, but again, because it would have been too big for the wall, it would have been quite difficult. We've had to remove some of the framing, so this is ultimately what we went for, and there it is going straight up through the roof. Again, a dry vent going through the roof is not ideal, but didn't have too many options. Here we've got the heavy duty cable for the water heater. It's a 6-3 wire, just in case we want to upgrade in the future. That's going to come out to a surface mount disconnect. And then at the bath shower here, we're actually going to do that in hardy board, so that's not going to be drywalled. So this is going to still be open, but the rest of it should be in the purple drywall. It's rated for bathrooms. Show you the bedroom real quick. Here we go, that's the back of the bathroom. Because of all these pipes, it's actually really difficult to insulate properly. And actually, annoyingly, that's going to be the noisiest thing, the dryer, if that's running. But, you know, I guess it's going to be 1 or 2 people in here, and they're probably not going to run the dryer while they're sleeping. This wall is still open. It's going to be open because of the hardy board, so no need to put all of the insulation in that one yet. And the HVAC units are in. Double check the torque on the flare nuts. Of course, it's difficult to actually leak test them or pressure test them because the condenser isn't in yet. But I'm hoping it's all going to be okay, otherwise I'll be opening up that wall again. And that's the bedroom. Another detail here, we put in these skylights. One small little headache is the opening, the rough opening is actually a little bit too short on this one, and I think it was this one. One of them was okay, but they have these grooves to take 1/2-inch drywall, but on 2 of them you might just be able to get a 1/4-inch drywall, if that. But rather than try and reframe them, we kind of went with it. And I'm going to focus on that side because that's the side you're going to see. Much less likely to see that side because you're probably not going to be looking from this direction. So that's where we're at. It's going to be a big day tomorrow. And this place is going to look a lot different in a couple of days. Okay, so this weekend I'm working on the HVAC, which we've kind of got roughed in at this point. And before the insulation inspection, and before we can get the insulation in around the last connections of the pipes, I need to connect up the head units to the line set and the condensate line, and then we should be good to go. We're not going to install the outside condenser unit until the end, but we've got the line sets in the wall, and I've put the head units up on the wall with 5/8 drywall, which is what we're going to use throughout, behind the units, so they can stay up there and the drywallers can just work around them. And so what you can see here, let me show you this one that is exposed. So in the wall we have a condensate line, and this is the condensate pipe that comes out of the back of the head unit. That's going to have to be connected into that pipe. Going to have to make sure, extra sure that that is not blocked and going to drain well. And that drains through here and down and out to the outside. And then along the wall here, along this wall, we have a mini split line set. So you can see the two lines here, copper lines. One I think is 5/8 and one's a 1/4 inch. And those are going to connect to the line set, the lines from the head unit. So that's the connection I'm going to make today. And the last connection here is the electrical supply and the control line. So that is coming through the back here. The electricians put that in for me, and coming through the front and connected to the front here. So once these are connected, we should be good to close the walls. We need to be extra sure that those line sets are secure. There is actually a special tool you need, which is a adjustable torque wrench. And another thing that I think is a good idea is to use this stuff on the end of the flanges, just to get a really good seal. And so let me show you the condenser unit here. So this is the back of it. Obviously it's not installed yet. I'll show you where that's going to go. But it's a Daikin unit. A number of people, including Derek Sherrill, recommend this unit, or this brand at least. And I think one of the nice things about it is that it is pre-charged, so it has a refrigerant in the condenser unit. So at the end, when you connect everything up and you make sure everything's secure, you've evacuated the lines. Again, you need a special tool for that, but it's not that expensive on Amazon. Once you've done that, you can release the refrigerant from this unit into the rest of the system. And as long as your lines aren't too long, that should be absolutely fine. And of course, as long as you haven't got any leaks, that's very crucial to make sure that all of your connections are secure. But this unit and the two head units were about $2,100. That's for a 9,000 BTU and a 12,000 BTU head unit. The 12,000 is going to be here in the living room area, and the 9,000 is going to be in the bedroom. And that doesn't include the line sets, so I had to buy two different line sets, one that's kind of short, I think about 15 feet, and another that was 50 feet. And so that was probably the hardest part, actually running the line sets through the wall. Because you can see here, the condenser is going to sit in the corner outside, and we have one line set here that runs along this wall. And I actually got the plumbers to install that for me, because you have to be very careful not to kink the pipe. So it's definitely a two-person job. But this is a 2x6 wall, so we had plenty of space. Two separate holes for the pipe with the insulation wrap. I think they're about 1.5 inches, the holes that they had to make. But all the way along this wall, which is of course not ideal, but we didn't really have many other options. Thankfully this one in the bedroom has a much shorter run, so it just has to go through these few studs here and then down, and then everything is going out through this wall here to the outside condenser unit. So let me show you that. So this is where all of our line sets are coming out, and our control wire, and this is the electrical supply here. So we put in a oversized wire for that circuit just in case for the future, and one of the line sets we kept with the factory flanges on, and the other one we had to cut because it was way too long. But I think I'm probably going to cut both of them at the end and flange them myself. bought the kit on Amazon. Shouldn't be too hard to get a good flare on the end. And that's pretty much it. You know, I think it'll be a bit nerve-wracking actually connecting everything up and making sure that it works. And that's probably going to happen after the drywall. But fingers crossed, if we do a good job at this stage, we won't have any worries later on down the line. And just to show you the condensate line here, we've actually got it coming off to the left. So that runs through here, down and out to the outside. Of course, the placement of these was a little bit tricky. You know, wanted to have them somewhat centered in the room and in a place that minimized the length of the line set and the amount of drilling that we had to do. So this seemed like a good location. Actually, in the plans, it had the unit here, which would have been less than ideal with all of this plumbing going on and having to cross over here, especially with the condensate line into this sort of blind corner here in the framing. So we moved it over there. I think that's actually going to work better. And on this side, we had the head unit on the plans actually right up here, which really wouldn't have worked because we have the Simpson strong wall. That would have been impossible to have gotten through, and the line set would have been really, really long with several bends, which would have been, again, less than ideal. So this seemed like a good place. You know, some people say not to put them over doors, but I don't think it really matters in this case. You know, it's a French door, we've got plenty of clearance above. I think that's actually a pretty good place for it to be, and it's going to get coverage for the kitchen and the living room over here. So that's the HVAC, that's what we're working on today, and yeah, excited to show you it finished. So again, I'm jumping around a bit here because we installed the condenser quite a bit after we installed the internal HVAC parts of the system. But I wanted to keep these parts of the video together for it to make sense to you folks. So here you can see the Daikin condenser on a concrete pad that we installed outside the ADU. Here are some of the tools that I bought off Amazon in order to be able to do this DIY. So I've got a flare tool here. I've got a vacuum pump to pull a vacuum on the system. I've got a torque wrench. And I've got a set of gauges to measure the pressures. Here is the flare tool. This worked really well. It's about $35 on Amazon. Definitely recommend it. And here you can see me actually pulling a vacuum on the system. So this is to make sure that there are no leaks. So all of the lines have been cut off and tightened. And I've pulled a vacuum and I've left it for about 30 minutes and I've checked that the pressures haven't dropped. After which point I am confident to be able to release the refrigerant into the system, and Daikin systems come pre-charged with refrigerant in the condenser unit. And once that's done, you're pretty much good to go.